here we are, Lake Maligne. Canada was great. So everybody's going to work on this photo. I hope, if you're not working on this photo, you can do whatever you want. But I am getting my dynamic symmetry redone because I didn't realize how my pencil would just disappear. So I went ahead and realigned it and used a Woody, which is a water-soluble crayon. Actually, it's like an oil pastel, and it'll wash off. It's sort of a cerulean blue. So I've got my middle, and I didn't get it quite centered. I made a boo-boo. So I've got it there, and I show you my focal point dynamic symmetry eye, the eye in the middle. So anyway, I'm going to change it a bit. So the horizon line is going to come up here. The stand of trees are going to interrupt up in here. The line of the mountain is going to match this dynamic plane. And I think this is going to be fine. But I'm going to show you today how to do the clouds. We're just going to be working on clouds today, and then I'm going to turn off the camera and let you absorb this and see what you want to do with yours. If you do decide to do this piece, you can do anything you want. But anyway, here we go. I've got my yellow, red, and blue. I've got my white in the middle with a little warm white I mixed with a tiny bit of Indian yellow to get my warm white. And then I've got some cool white and cool red and cool and warm red. The gray, and then the ultramarine blue, and then the phthalo blue. So I've got a warm and a cool of each primary, yellow, red, and blue, and that's all I'm going to need for the clouds. So if I want to go to some of the purple side of the sky, I have my reds available. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and use this palette knife. This has been my new favorite one. Real tall and skinny, and it's the Italian one, the RGM. But I think it comes in many brands. But this one I got on in Binders in Atlanta, and I just reordered it on Amazon. It is on Amazon, so I can post that in the library. I think we're going to be posting in the library some more. So I'm going to go ahead and put the sky in. And I'm going to use brush and palette knife today. I've got a couple of brushes here that I might go to. They're all a long flat, a short flat, and then an Egbert. So they're very flexible. So I may refer to these. I'm not sure. Just going to see how the palette knife does for the sky. I'm going to go ahead and put in, with a warm white, some skimming motions on getting some paint on there. Some warm white. And these are called sun dogs. They're coming in between the clouds. It was a very overcast day, but it had great light coming through. I'll do this very, very quickly. There's no need to skim the whole thing. A cloud in between here. So I took liberties on this photo to move the stand of trees over so that it meets the focal point right in the middle of the canvas. So this is off center. It's not straight like a target. So the cloud, the mountain is going to go here. The cloud is going to go up to the mountain. So I'm just going to skim in some of that over the undertone, which I put in with transparent red oxide, and I used a wet one because I was using Cobra, and the wet one forms some tones, some value tones, some color value tones that are useful. Everything is just sort of a guideline to get started. Probably going to lose my line there that I put in with the water-soluble crayon. It's called a Stabilo, and they shorten it to a Woody because it is encased in wood, so they just call them Woodies for short. So anyway, we've got the light of the clouds in there. Now we can do some of the background of the clouds. It is sort of an overcast day. There's going to be some warm colors. That's why I put the gray on here. So we can go to a lighter gray and see how gray we want to make some of these. And here, here. That nice transparent warm red oxide is helping it stay warm in places. And the cool color with it will be nice. I'm skimming just ever so chaotically because it's not a problem. I'm going to show you something that I do that I haven't done before because I haven't worked this big for you. So that gives us some clouds that are grayish in tone. And then we'll go to blue next. So this is the dynamic line of this mountain, which I have no idea what the name of that mountain is. Beautiful place in Banff National Park. So the standard trees are going to interrupt that color playing. Okay, that's probably enough. Now I'll just do some blue, ultramarine blue and white. Add it to that mess of gray that's on the palette. And if it's too blue, we'll just add some of this cad red and it'll give it a nicer grayer blue. Cad red is such a leveler when mixing colors. It adds to just enough of a value change and a warmth or a cool change, whatever you're looking for. This is more of a warm blue because the cad red's warm. The ultramarine can go either cool or warm because it's one of those transparent pigments that can go either way. Let's see how that one does. Put this up here, that's pretty good. You didn't mix enough. Ultramarine blue, cad red light, just an eyelash or two, a lot of white. We've got our phthalo blue in case we want to turn the blue to a little greenish tone of cool, but I don't see it happening right now. We'll just see what happens. You know, 3 primaries can make any color in the world. If you use a little of this and a little of that, you can get all kinds of colors just using 3 primary colors. Preferably a warm and cool of each primary. If I wanted to turn it more to purple, I could use the alizarin crimson. This is Cobra, so actually they call it carmine. So I could turn it a little bit to purple in the cool tone of purple. Let's just see what that does a little bit here. It's a shift that's not much, but it's a little shift. Okay, let me just show you what I'm going to do now. With the brush, this long flat, I can start to merge some of these things because it's a cloudy day and soft. The palette knife might get a little bit too much for me, so I can merge these in. Or another thing I can do, if it's too much color, I could take a paper towel, scrunch it up, flop it a little bit, and start to mix it this way. This is great for clouds that are cloudy on a cloudy day and you want to get a lot of variety. This mixes the color in well, and it can go into the cloud itself, the lighter part of the cloud itself. What the sky becomes all these colors that I skimmed on skimmed on to the canvas. And look at that. That mixes it pretty well. And since it's a soft part of the painting, cloud-like, it really does work. And some of that transparent red oxide comes out through it, peeking through it. And you get these nice soft edges without having to stress over the palette knife doing it for you. Or even the brush, because a lot of times the brush brushes it out. That's why I'm really fond of palette knife. That got really dirty, so I'm gonna throw it away. And then I have another one here. I'll just keep doing this. I think it's working. Floppy paper towel technique. That looks pretty good. Now I can actually take my brush, and I got too much paint on it, and then take my brush and maybe pat some of these odd looking stripy places in to place. And that transparent red oxide's peeking through nicely, giving us a cloudy day effect. Got these nice soft areas. So now I can go back to the palette knife and work some more color tones in, the lighter warm white and the cooler plain white. So these stand-up trees are going to go up in there, but and here's the horizon. So it's kind of confusing right now because I made that change. So if it's confusing, I could take a scumbling brush and put those clouds in, put those trees in, a little yellow, a little red, a little blue will make me a green, and not such a bright green, I want a brown green, so I use red. So I could scumble those clouds in, trees in to show you where those trees will be now, since I made the change. Right up to that bullseye, that dynamic eyeball. So that will give us, here's the trees that are going to be here. So I could just scumble those in to get those back in place. And then the horizon line actually will be here now. I'll just go ahead, this tape is here, so I'll just go ahead. There's a line here that you can see from the grid. So that's where the horizon line will be, here. That might help you see it better. And then this mountain, these mountains are very, very dark blue, because maybe that phthalo, a little bit of that phthalo. I just make that line of the mountain so you have an idea where those mountains are going to be. So scumbling you can do in a dry painting too, at the beginning. It's got to be dry though. And some of that warm transparent red oxide is going to come through. Okay, so now you have a better idea of how the mountains are going to work with the sky. There's this stand of trees here. Again, the red and the yellow making that dark green. Just in the distance, they're not that high. Okay, so here's these. And that looks good off center. This is the still, you can see that little bullseye mark of the dynamic symmetry. Okay, I think that'll read better for you. Okay, and of course this is going to be lake here. It's going to be very light. I'll just go ahead with my brush, since it had white on it, and just knock that down a little bit so you can see where the horizon line is. They always say it's a no-no to have the horizon line in the middle, but it's not a no-no if it's balanced in symmetry with your grid, and there's other things like mountains and trees that are going up and over and diagonally. Then the center is not a problem because it balances. Okay, so that's going to be my lake. So we'll do that along with now. We're just going to do the clouds. Okay, so we've got the gray and the blue, the clouds, the cloudy day look. I think I'm going to accent some of these darker areas with the brush and put in some lighter part of the clouds, and then let you do your thing. And we'll come back to the next phase, which will be this phase. So I'm going to make some purpley, I'm going to do it with the brush. I'll mix some purpley shadowy colors. And they're really too bright, so you've got to go to that cad red to tone it down. Gray it up a little, maybe some more white to get to the gray you want. So there's a nice dark gray. And then this one got too pink on me, so I'm going to add this warm gray to it. A little bit more blue. Maybe a little of this yellow, the Indian yellow, because it won't go to green. If you use this one, it'll go to green. Indian yellow is a nice neutral. Okay, so there's a couple of darker cloud shadowy places. So let's put some of those in. Let's put one here. I'm just going to do some dot dashes next to the mountain. Not much, because I don't want it to overpower that floppy paper towel thing I did to make it soft. Let's go to the darker part and add that to it a little here and there. This is when I use the brush to test these things, because the palette knife, if you're testing these little spots, it gets a little awkward. So go to the brush to do some of this stuff. If I don't get the clouds exactly like the picture, that's not a problem. So these darker shadows, we'll do the same thing with a floppy paper towel again. This is a technique I learned when I was brush painting. It's a lot easier than stressing over the brush strokes. And if it's not doing enough, I have this Egbert, which is a nice long, soft bristle, and I can just soften it in there and let it melt into the shape. And it'll say clouds that are darker, shadowy underbellies, the underbellies of the clouds. So that Egbert comes in handy to, it kind of does the same thing as a floppy paper towel. So if you don't want to use a paper towel, you can use this. With the paper towel, you're hitting it so delicately that it hardly moves it. It just moves it enough to make an impact. It's kind of a cool technique. So now we have some darker shadow areas. Then we can go back to our clouds. And I don't stress with these clouds because I can always let them dry and come back and mess with them with another technique of palette knife or brush or floppy paper towel. So that's just probably enough shadow for now. We can lighten some of these too. As we develop, we can lighten some of this with more white for the clouds. So where was my palette knife? Okay, here's my palette knife again. So we're going to go back to just the white will probably do us this time. I'm going to put it here by the Indian yellow just in case I need a half an eyelash. Just to give it some more depth. This will make, the palette knife will make the color stand out. As you know, you've used the palette knife now enough to know that it just pumps up the color. It actually plumps up the color, and plumping it and pumping it up is an effect that works really well for depth. I think I got a little bit of blue in there, but that's not a problem. So this is grabbing. It's grabbing onto the wet paint. You know, I love that term grab because it'll melt into the paint and grab a hold of what's underneath and do a depth thing. I can merge these two clouds together a little with this brush. And clouds do that. They just sort of melt into each other. They're so soft, and so when you get these edges to melt into the shape, you're much more happier than them being a cookie cutter coloring book kind of shape. You want them to just magically merge. And this is more yellow than I want it, but the warmth of the cloud is, you need it. You need the warmth of the yellow white, the warm white to work. Okay, this is probably enough. I can put the white back on. And see what we get. I always get nervous with white because everything gets so contaminated. The white gets so contaminated. I'm going to find a clean place. And that almost looks too blue. Got contaminated by the blue. Some more white. This is titanium cobra. Okay, let's see what we can do here and just do a little grab, another grab into that color where it's nice and interesting. This one kind of goes out this way. Fade into the distance. Okay. Clouds are so abstract. Sometimes this works like a charm, sometimes it doesn't. You just have to be patient. That's working pretty good. Of course, you can use your fingers if you have some palette knife little places. I can pat some of this a little bit where it's, I've got a palette knife streak. Intuition is telling me to quit with the clouds a little bit and let this be what it is right now and see how it does later once I get the rest of the painting intact. But this is working pretty good. This is bright and this is bright. So I've got some brightness there and some brightness here. And that's probably all I need to say the sun is somewhere back in there, making that sundog effect through the clouds that are gray. So we'll get that worked in, and I'll just hopefully inspire you by this to get yours started, your leg line, or your whatever you want to do. Maybe you just want to do the rocks. Maybe, I think Isabel wanted to do the rocks only. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Everybody sees something differently. That's still enough light there, I think. I can see some of my pencil marks underneath now. They're not bad, but I can see some of them. They're not bothering me. I think they'll just disappear eventually into the paint as we go along. The watercolor pencil just disappeared immediately. So I can add more clouds. Let's call that a day for now. And then I will come back to you after you've thought about your clouds or have thought about what you want to do in general for this particular assignment. And we can do these later. So for now, good luck with your clouds and your subject matter. And I'll see you on this other side.